The vault hung in the shadow of a dying star, its enormous frame glinting faintly against the pale embers of fading light. It was not a construct of elegance or artistry, but of sheer scale and endurance. Entire cities could have fit within its walls. Whole fleets could have taken shelter in its cavernous hangars. And yet, for as long as the archives of known civilizations stretched, the vaults had remained silent, lifeless, untouchable. No one knew who had built them. No one dared to claim them. The only thing the galaxy agreed upon was the law, never wake the humans. The words were taught to children before they could walk, repeated in songs and carved into stone on distant worlds. It was the one commandment that transcended culture, language, and species. No record explained where the law had come from. No archive contained the full truth, but the fear behind it was universal. Archivist Zarin had told himself he did not believe in myths. He was a scholar, a seeker of forgotten truths, one who cataloged the remains of lost civilizations. The Vaith Collective valued such work, for every artifact of the past strengthened their sense of superiority. Yet as Zarin's small research vessel drifted closer to the vault's surface, he could not silence the unease crawling along his spine. The structure before him was not dead. He could feel it. Instruments read only silence, no power, no radiation, no active defense grids, but his instincts told him otherwise. Something watched, something waited. Still, curiosity overpowered fear. The archivist whispered to himself, a nervous habit born of long nights alone among ruins. Harmless, that's all they are, harmless. He guided his craft into one of the vault's gaping docks. No resistance met him. The docking clamps, ancient and rusted, still shifted into place as if expecting him. His suit hissed as he stepped into the vast corridor beyond. Dust clung to every surface, yet the floor beneath his claws bore no cracks. The walls pulsed faintly with light, as though breathing in his presence. Zarin swallowed, a relic, nothing more. The archivist walked deeper. His lamp beam stretched across endless rows of glass chambers lining the walls. Each one contained a figure suspended in crystalline stasis. Pale faces, soft skin, two eyes closed in eternal sleep. Humans. Zarin's heart pounded in his chest. So many, thousands, perhaps millions, preserved as though they had merely paused between breaths. Myths painted humans as towering monsters, creatures of destruction that could unmake fleets with their minds. Yet these beings looked so fragile. Their limbs were thin. Their chests rose and fell so faintly that for a moment he thought them already dead. They are not gods, he whispered, voice echoing. They are not demons, just flesh. He pressed his clawed hand against one chamber, peering at the still form inside. A female, hair drifting like frozen strands of fire, lips pale but serene. Her hands were folded across her chest as though in quiet rest. She looked almost peaceful, almost kind. The archivist's mind raced. What knowledge lay sealed with these sleepers? What secrets of the old galaxy slumbered within their fragile skulls? 1,000 questions filled him, and one thought louder than all the others. The law was not a truth, but a barrier. Perhaps the galaxy had feared what it could not understand. Perhaps the law was not wisdom, but chains. His trembling hands hovered over the chamber's controls. The panel was old, cracked, and covered in layers of dust, but the markings were clear enough. One symbol shone faintly brighter than the rest, pulsing softly, as though waiting for him to touch it. Just one, he muttered. One cannot hurt, one will answer questions, one will prove the myths false. He hesitated, torn between duty and desire. Then, with a sharp breath, he pressed the seal. The chamber responded instantly. Steam hissed from hidden vents, crystals cracked and melted. Lights along the corridor flared to life one by one, chasing away the shadows as if the vault itself had been roused. The human inside stirred. A faint shiver passed through the body. Zarin staggered back, heartbeats hammering, eyes wide. The woman's chest rose sharply. Her lips parted. And then, with a sound that made the archivist's soul tremble, she exhaled her first breath in thousands of years. The vault was no longer silent. The sound was small at first, just a hiss of air leaving lungs that had been still for longer than empires had existed. Yet to Archivist Zarin, it was louder than thunder. His lamp quivered in his grip as he stumbled back, his eyes locked on the human within the chamber. Her chest rose once more, slow, deliberate, then again stronger this time. Ice crystals slid down her arms like melting jewels. The glass that had enclosed her cracked further, splitting with a sharp note that echoed through the vault like a tolling bell. No, Zarin whispered, his voices trembling. This is not possible, you should not. But there she was, alive. The final fragments of the crystalline shell fell away, dissolving into mist at her feet. The human staggered forward, bare feet touching the smooth floor. Her body trembled with weakness, but her eyes opened wide, clear and focused. They were blue, a hue so piercing and strange that Zarin felt them reach into him, past his flesh, past his thoughts, into something deeper. The archivist had studied countless species. He knew eyes that reflected intelligence, eyes that shone with hunger, eyes that burned with malice. These were none of those things. These eyes contained weight, memory, the gravity of countless ages, as though she had lived not one life but thousands. She inhaled again, sharp and strong. The vault responded. Lights awakened along the corridor. Energy flowed through conduits that had been dark since the first stone pyramids were raised on alien worlds. Far above them, massive doors groaned as if stretching after eternal sleep. The silence was gone. The vault itself seemed to breathe with her. Zarin pressed himself against the wall, claws clutching the edge of his lamp so hard he nearly cracked it. His mind screamed at him to flee, to run to his vessel and escape before it was too late. Yet his legs would not move. Curiosity and terror warred within him, leaving him paralyzed. The human's gaze shifted to him. Her voice, when it came, was quiet, almost gentle, but it carried across the air as though the walls themselves bent to deliver it. "Who woke me?" Zarin froze. The words were not in his language, nor in any of the countless tongues catalogued in his archives, and yet he understood them perfectly. Every syllable pressed directly into his thoughts, bypassing translation devices and linguistic barriers. It was not communication, it was comprehension. His throat tightened. His mind raced with responses, but none seemed safe. He stammered out the only truth left to him. I did." For a moment the human said nothing. Her head tilted slightly, and her eyes narrowed in a way that was not unkind, yet not forgiving. It was a look one might give to a child who had touched a dangerous flame. She stepped forward. Her legs, though newly awakened, carried her with steady grace. The air itself seemed to bend around her presence. Not violently, not with force, but as if space itself remembered her. "You should not have," she said. Zarin's hearts hammered. He wanted to explain, to cry out that he had only wished for knowledge, that he had not believed the myths. Instead, all that left his mouth was a desperate whisper. "Why? Why are you feared?" The human's expression softened, though her eyes never lost their weight. She did not answer him, not yet. Instead, she looked upward as though listening to something far away. The vault shuddered faintly, and somewhere in the depths of its endless halls, machines groaned awake. Across the galaxy, sensors stirred. On distant worlds, alarms began to echo, though their inhabitants had long forgotten their purpose. Fleets rerouted, panicked whispers spreading before official words could be spoken. Old codes, sealed in vaults of governments older than memory, flared to life. The signal was unmistakable. A human lived again. Zarin did not know this yet, but he felt it in his bones. The galaxy had changed. Nothing would remain as it was. The human turned her gaze back to him. "The law was given for a reason," she said quietly. "You will learn it soon." Her voice held no threat, no anger, no boast, only certainty. And with that certainty, Zarin understood that whatever force had bound the galaxy together in shared fear was real. The first human had breathed. The silence of eternity was broken. Across the stars, the awakening was felt before it was understood. In the capital of the Aleth Dominion, deep within a palace of crystal spires, the Council of 10 was in session when their chamber walls shivered with the sound of alarms that had not rung in 10,000 years. The councillors froze. Their scales and plumes lifted in instinctive fear, though none of them yet knew why. The great console at the center lit up with an old warning code, so old that none of them had ever seen it before except in whispered legend. On the edge of the Tronari Nebula, miners stopped their drills as the ground itself trembled beneath their feet. Their equipment displayed streams of data that made no sense, energy pulses traveling faster than light, ripples in space that should not exist. Some dropped their tools and prayed, though they did not know what for. In the orbiting citadel of the Vaith Collective, Zarin's people, the High Scholars, felt it too. A presence echoed through their sensor arrays, their libraries, their vaults of history. The signal was faint yet undeniable, a human biosignature, active and awake, the same signal that had once forced empires to their knees. Everywhere it reached, silence followed. Leaders who had spoken with certainty hours before suddenly found no words. Old instincts stirred, memories written not in books but in the bones of civilizations. It was as though the galaxy itself shuddered, remembering wounds that had never healed. On world after world, the same phrase was spoken aloud, whispered in fear, sometimes shouted in disbelief. A human lives. The law returned to them in that instant, as sharp and real as the day it was first spoken. Never wake the humans, never disturb their sleep, never invite their return. But the law had been broken. On his research vessel, Archivist Zarin was unaware of the chaos rippling outward from the vault. He only knew the human stood before him, her breath steady, her eyes sharper with each moment of wakefulness. He wanted to speak, to ask the hundreds of questions clawing at his mind, but the words tangled inside him. The silence stretched until the human finally broke it. They know. Zarin blinked, who knows? She did not answer him directly. Instead, she placed a hand against the wall of the vault. The surface lit beneath her touch, lines of energy racing outward like veins filling with light. The station itself responded to her presence, and the deep hum of ancient engines rolled through the floor. Far above, satellites that had been dormant for epochs came alive. They turned outward, broadcasting a signal into the void, a signal that the galaxy had not heard since the humans themselves had chosen silence. The archivist staggered back in horror. "You are sending a beacon." The human's gaze did not shift from the glowing wall. Not a beacon, a reminder. On the world of Tarvan, a priest dropped the chalice from his hands as the old scripts etched into the temple walls flared with light, revealing words in a forgotten tongue. The congregation fell to their knees, realizing that their ritual symbols had always been warnings. On the fractured moon of Iln, the warlords who had been locked in endless conflict suddenly ceased their battle when their ships' systems shut down in unison, overridden by a command older than their species. On every screen, 3 words appeared in their own language: "Do not wake." And on the distant fringe of the galaxy, where stars burned faint and lonely, nomads gathered around their fires, listening to the sudden whisper that spread from mind to mind without need of machines. A story older than any of them surged back into their thoughts, as if the universe itself reminded them of its truth. Never wake the humans. In the vault, Zarin trembled. His hands shook so violently that he nearly dropped his recorder. At last, he found his voice, barely more than a rasp. "They will come for me. They will destroy me for this." The human finally turned back to him. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes held neither pity nor cruelty, only inevitability. "They will not destroy you," she said quietly. "They will destroy themselves. Fear makes them weak. Fear always has." Zarin stared at her, breath shallow. "What are you?" For the first time since waking, she smiled. It was not the smile of a predator, nor of a conqueror, but of someone who knew a truth too vast to explain. "We are what the stars remember," she said. And in that moment, the archivist understood why every civilization had obeyed the law for so long, why the vaults had been left untouched, why no one dared to test the warning. The galaxy remembered the humans, and now it remembered fear. The first steps echoed like drumbeats in the silence. Bare feet touched the smooth alloy floor, leaving faint trails of condensation where frost still clung to her skin. The sound was not loud, yet to Zarin it seemed to reverberate through the entire vault, as though the structure itself listened to her movement. The archivist pressed himself against the wall, claws splayed wide, his body trembling with every step she took. He wanted to run, but he knew instinctively that he would never reach his ship before she caught him, if she wished to. And the strangest thought of all pressed into his mind. She did not even see him as a threat worth chasing. The human moved with steady purpose. She did not stumble, though she had been frozen for uncounted millennia. She did not glance around in wonder or confusion like the countless revived specimens Zarin had seen from other species. She walked as though she belonged here, as though the long centuries had been nothing more than a moment's pause. She reached the center of the chamber and placed her hand upon a control pillar. Light flared beneath her touch, racing outward in luminous streams that filled the corridors with a golden glow. Machinery stirred. Gears and conduits groaned awake, sending deep vibrations through the walls. The vault, which had been silent for so long, was alive once more. Zarin staggered forward, his recorder clutched tightly against his chest. His voice quavered. You control it." The human turned her gaze upon him. Those eyes, unblinking, impossibly deep, held no arrogance. They held recognition. "It remembers us," she said softly. "It was built to serve." Zaren's throat tightened. By whom? Her lips curved slightly, though not into a smile. By those who feared what we might become without restraint. The archivist could not comprehend. The legends had painted humans as destroyers, conquerors, beings who brought ruin wherever they went. Yet the being before him was calm, measured, almost mournful. She bore no weapons, no armor, no threat except herself. And still, every part of Zaren's instincts screamed that she was more dangerous than any fleet in the galaxy. The lights in the ceiling brightened, revealing the endless rows of stasis chambers stretching into the dark. Thousands upon thousands of humans lay within, each one still sleeping. The archivist felt his heart seize. He had woken only one. What if? "You fear I will wake them all," the human said, answering the thought he had not spoken. Zaren froze. "Can you read my mind?" She shook her head slowly. "I do not need to. Fear is loud. It always has been." The archivist swallowed hard. He forced his voice through the knot in his throat. What will you do?" She did not answer at once. Instead, she looked up at the chambers, her eyes lingering on the countless silent faces frozen in crystal. For a moment, something like sorrow crossed her expression. Then she turned back to him. "What I must," she said simply. The words struck him with a weight greater than any threat could have carried. Beyond the vault, the galaxy reeled. Fleets had already shifted position, governments had declared states of emergency, and in countless homes, beings of every shape and size clutched their loved ones tighter. All because a single human had drawn breath. And now that human walked. The hum of the vault deepened. Enormous doors at the far end of the corridor began to grind open. The sound was like mountains splitting apart. Dust and frost fell in cascades as ancient hinges moved for the first time in ages. Beyond lay a vast hall lined with towering machines, their forms obscured by shadows but their outlines unmistakable, war constructs, silent for millennia, now stirring in answer to her presence. Zaren's voice cracked. You are awakening weapons." Her gaze did not waver from the opening doors. "No, I am awakening memory. The weapons remember us as the vault does. They will not move against me." "And against us," Zaren whispered. She looked at him then, and for the first time he saw a spark of steel in her eyes, a glimmer of power that needed no demonstration. "That depends," she said, "on what you choose to do with the fear you carry." Zaren's breath caught. In that moment he understood the truth more than any archive had ever taught him. The law had never been superstition. It had been survival. The human stepped through the doors into the hall of machines. The vault's lights followed her like faithful stars. And the galaxy held its breath. The hall stretched on endlessly, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadow. Colossal machines stood in silence, their frames coated with layers of frost and dust. They were statues of war, each one a monument to power. Some bore wings of alloy wider than the length of cruisers, others bristled with weapons whose purpose Zaren could not even guess. And yet none of them stirred against the human who walked calmly between their ranks. The archivist followed, though each step felt heavier than the last. His instincts screamed to turn back, to flee, to forget this mistake. Yet curiosity chained him to her path. The recorder in his claws trembled, but he kept it aimed at the woman, determined that if he did not survive, at least his people would know what he had seen. The machine's eyes, slender slits of crystal set in their faces, flared faintly as she passed. Their heads tilted fractionally toward her as though recognizing her presence. Not one turned its gaze toward Zaren. He might as well have been invisible. "This place," Zaren whispered, his voice bouncing weakly against the steel walls. "It is a fortress." The human did not slow her stride. "It is a memory." Her voice echoed with strange resonance, carrying further than it should have. It seemed to ripple through the hall, brushing against the archivist's skin like a cold wind. He shivered. At last, she stopped before a towering dais of black alloy. She placed her hand upon its surface, and the hall came alive. The walls flared with light, and the ceiling dissolved into a vast canopy of stars. Zaren gasped, stumbling back as he realized he was staring into a projection of the galaxy itself, glittering and immense. Thousands of points of light flared brighter, then dimmed, each one a sun, a system, a civilization. The human's eyes narrowed as the stars shifted. Images began to play out in silence, fleets of ships swarming like locusts, whole worlds alight with war. The projections carried no sound, but Zaren's imagination supplied the screams, the thunder, the chaos. He whispered, "This is history." She nodded once. "Ours, yours, the galaxy." The projection focused on one system, its suns blazing with brilliance. Fleets surrounded it, alien banners glowing. Zaren recognized some of the emblems, ancient versions of empires that still existed today. Others were symbols of powers long since gone, swallowed by time. Then came the humans. Their ships emerged from the void, smaller than the others, fewer in number. But when they moved, the stars themselves seemed to bend. Their weapons were not cannons, not missiles, but distortions of light and gravity. In a single sweep, fleets vanished into nothing. Planets burned not from fire, but from unraveling matter. Zaren fell to his knees. No, this cannot be real. No species has power like this. The human turned her gaze to him. "You asked why we are feared. This is the reason. We did not conquer because we wished to. We did not destroy because we delighted in it. We fought because others forced our hand. And when we fought, we did not lose." The projection shifted again. This time Zaren saw not war, but silence. The human fleets vanished. Their weapons shut down, their colonies emptied. World after world darkened as if their inhabitants had simply walked away. "They begged us to stop," she continued. "Not with fleets, not with weapons, but with desperation, and we listened, because we saw what we were becoming, what the galaxy was becoming around us. So we made the pact, we would sleep. We would remove ourselves from the game, but one law was given to those who remained." Zaren's throat was dry, his words scraped out. "Never wake the humans." Her eyes gleamed in the starlight. "Yes." The projection dissolved, leaving only the vault's cold hall once more. Silence returned, but the weight of what Zaren had seen crushed him. His people had always laughed at the myths, calling them exaggerations to keep primitives in line. But the truth was worse. The myths had been merciful lies. The reality was power beyond comprehension. Zaren staggered to his feet, his hearts pounding so hard he thought they would burst. "If this is true, then your return means the end. The empires will never let you live. They will strike before you strike them." The human's gaze was steady. "And by striking they will prove the law's wisdom. They will destroy themselves." She turned away, her footsteps echoing once more. Zaren followed, though fear weighed heavier than ever. For the first time, he did not wonder what secrets she held. He only wondered how long the galaxy had left before panic consumed it. The echo of the past had returned, and it would not be ignored. The message spread faster than any fleet could travel. From one end of the galaxy to the other, every civilization received the same undeniable truth. A human was awake. It did not matter that only one had stirred, nor that she had spoken no words of conquest. Her very existence was enough. In the grand chambers of the Olith Dominion, the Council of 10 argued with voices sharp as blades. Half demanded immediate war, insisting that if the human was destroyed quickly, the balance could be preserved. The others trembled at the thought, insisting that to strike first was to invite doom. Their shouting echoed through crystal halls until the council fractured, each member turning against the others. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Dominion split. On the merchant world of Bravex, panic consumed the streets. Traders abandoned their stalls, ships fled the docks, and families crowded into shelters. The word had traveled through rumor, but rumor was stronger than fact. Some swore they had already seen fleets of humans rising from hidden worlds, though no such fleets existed. The mere idea of them was enough to unravel order. Even among the Vaith collective, Zaren's people, fear was stronger than discipline. The high scholars who once spoke only of knowledge and progress now screamed of survival, debating whether to erase Zaren and all trace of his research. They feared not just the human, but the shame of having broken the one law that had preserved them. Across every world, fear was louder than reason. Inside the vault, the woman who had awakened walked slowly through the silent halls. The machines still hummed faintly, shadows of their ancient power, but they did not stir beyond recognition of her presence. She seemed untroubled by the chaos spreading through the galaxy. In fact, she seemed to expect it. Zaren followed closely, his recorder still active though his hands shook so badly the image wavered. "They are breaking," he whispered, half to himself, half to her. "The empires are turning on one another already. They will burn everything, and it has only been days." The human glanced at him, her blue eyes calm. "It was always going to happen. You feared us so deeply that you built your order on that fear. Remove the silence and the structure collapses." Zarin shook his head violently. But this is madness. They will attack each other before they even decide to act against you. Entire systems will fall into war. She stopped, turning fully to face him. The weight of her gaze forced him to silence. Do you think your order was peace? She asked softly. It was a balance of fear, nothing more. Your leaders never forgot us. They only forgot the lesson that came with us. Her words struck him harder than any weapon. He thought of the collective's endless debates, the Dominion's hunger for expansion, the petty wars fought at the galaxy's fringes. She was right. Their peace had never been built on trust or cooperation. It had been built on the shadow of the law. The law had broken, now the shadow was gone. On the world of Iln, warlords gathered their fleets, each one convinced that the others would try to strike the human first. Missiles and plasma fire turned the sky into a storm, not against the human, but against one another. By the time they realized their mistake, their fleets were in ruins, their power shattered. On Tarvin, priests declared the awakening a divine sign. Half the population fell into worship, proclaiming the return of their starborn saviors. The other half called for purification, demanding the human be destroyed before she could bring judgment. Cities burned in riots before the first official fleet even left orbit. And still, the human in the vault did nothing. Zarin trembled as he watched her stand before a massive viewport, her gaze fixed on the faint glow of the dying star beyond. "Why do you not act?" he asked, unable to contain himself. "If you hold such power, why not command the machines? Why not take control before they destroy everything?" Her voice was quiet, almost mournful. "Because power is not the lesson. We walked away from it once long ago. If they destroy themselves, it is not because of me. It is because they never learned." Zarin's claws dug into the casing of his recorder. He wanted to scream at her, to demand that she save them, but deep inside he understood the truth. The galaxy was tearing itself apart not because of her presence, but because of what she represented. Fear was louder than reason, and fear was already winning. The archivist sank to his knees, the weight of it crushing him. He had broken the law for curiosity, but the punishment was far greater than he had imagined. He had not only awakened a human, he had awakened the truth of what his galaxy had always been. And it was breaking. The vault's vast corridors glowed faintly in the half-light of ancient machines. Dust hung in the air, swirling in slow spirals, disturbed only by the quiet steps of the human as she moved. She walked with calm certainty, yet to Zarin every stride felt like the tolling of a great bell, marking the final hours of his galaxy. He followed behind, his claws clicking nervously against the floor. For hours, or perhaps only minutes, time no longer felt steady. He had watched messages flood into his recorder. Emergency broadcasts, desperate pleas, fragmented cries from across the stars. Civilizations were unraveling faster than he had ever believed possible. He could not endure the silence any longer. "Please," he burst out, his voice breaking. "Tell me you will not destroy us. Tell me you will not bring the others awake." The human stopped. Slowly, she turned to face him. Her eyes, those endless, piercing eyes, met his, and for a moment Zarin wished he had never asked. There was no malice in her gaze, but neither was there comfort. There was only truth. "Why do you ask for mercy?" she said quietly. "I have done nothing." Zarin's hearts hammered. "Nothing. The galaxy is tearing itself apart because of you. Wars are beginning. Old rivalries have ignited. Armies are already moving. If you do not act, everything will fall." She studied him in silence. The faint hum of the machines filled the void between them. Then, at last, she spoke. "It is not because of me. It is because of fear. Fear has always been the root." He shook his head violently. "Then stop it. Use your power, your machines, your knowledge. Whatever you have, stop them before it is too late." The woman's expression softened, though sorrow lingered at the edges. "And if I did, would they learn? Or would they only kneel before another master as they did before?" Zarin froze. He had no answer. The human moved again, walking toward the heart of the vault. Here, a vast chamber opened before them, filled with stasis pods arranged like a cathedral of crystal. Thousands of humans lay sleeping, each one perfectly preserved, their faces serene. The sight stole Zarin's breath. She stepped onto a platform at the chamber's center. As her hand touched its surface, the pods began to glow faintly, one by one. It was not full awakening, but a reminder that they were there, waiting. Zarin's body quaked. "No, please do not. If they all wake, there will be nothing left." The woman looked back at him, her gaze heavy with centuries of memory. Do you think we do not know that? Do you think we did not understand the danger of what we had become? Her voice carried not just through the chamber but into him. It resonated in his chest like a second heartbeat. We walked away, she said. We silenced ourselves because we saw what would happen if we did not. We made a pact. We would never rise again unless forced. And we gave the galaxy one law, not to protect you from us, but to protect you from what you would do if we returned. Zaren's claws dug into the floor. His mind reeled. Protect us from ourselves. Yes, her tone was quiet but unshakable. Your leaders built their power on fear of us. It united them even as it corrupted them. Without us, you might have grown beyond it. But fear is easier than wisdom, and so they remembered only the threat, not the lesson. She turned back to the pods. The glow intensified, spreading across the chamber. For one terrifying moment, Zaren thought she truly meant to awaken them all. He fell to his knees. Please, if nothing else, if you have any mercy, leave them sleeping. Do not end us. I was wrong to wake you. I was blind. Do not punish the galaxy for my mistake. The silence stretched long enough for him to feel hope break inside him. Then slowly the light dimmed. The pods fell dark once more. The sleepers remained untouched. Zaren's breath tore from his lungs in a gasp. Relief and dread tangled inside him. The human stepped down from the platform. Her gaze lingered on the endless rows of her kin before returning to him. I will not wake them, not yet. But know this, if the galaxy forces us, if your fear becomes action, then they will rise, and there will be no second chance. Her words struck like the crack of a world splitting. Zaren bowed his head, trembling. He did not know if she had spared them out of mercy or out of patience. All he knew was that she had made a choice, and the galaxy's fate now hung by a thread thinner than starlight. The galaxy burned with whispers. No fleet had yet struck at the human in the vault, but wars had already begun. Neighbors turned on neighbors. Trade routes collapsed. Armies gathered at borders, each convinced the others would act first. Fear spread faster than light, and no power could contain it. In the vault's heart, the woman stood before the great stasis chamber, her figure outlined by the faint glow of dormant pods. Behind her, Zaren knelt in silence. He had begged, pleaded, and wept, but still the weight of her presence pressed down on him like the pull of a black star. Then, without warning, the ancient machines around them roared to life. Conduits glowed as streams of energy flowed through forgotten circuits. The walls trembled with power. 1,000 beacons hidden across the galaxy, silent since time immemorial, flared awake. Zaren looked up in horror. What are you doing? The woman's voice was steady, though tinged with sorrow. I am reminding them, not with destruction, not with war, but with memory. On distant worlds, skis rippled with strange light. Across Dominion capitals, collective research stations, and Bravax's trade ports, the beacons projected a vision. Not words, not symbols, memories. Every being saw them. They saw humans walking among stars long before their own ancestors had tamed fire. They saw the birth of empires under human guidance, the rise of technology so advanced they seemed like miracles. They saw the wars, too, the endless wars that shattered worlds, tore suns apart, and left galaxies scarred. They saw the day the humans made their choice, the day they looked upon their own power and understood the cost, the day they built the vaults, sealed themselves away, and left a single law behind: never wake us. And then they saw why. Not because humans would strike first, but because their very presence would remind the galaxy of fear. Fear would become chaos. Chaos would destroy more than humans ever could. The visions faded, but the silence that followed was heavier than war. Across the stars, fleets stopped their advance. Leaders stared into the air as if still seeing ghosts. The truth had been given, undeniable and eternal. Back in the vault, Zaren felt the weight of those memories crash into him. His claws shook as he tried to record, but the recorder lay useless on the floor. Every word was already etched into the minds of billions. He whispered hoarsely, "You could have ruled all of them. You could still rule them now." The human looked down at him. To rule is simple, to teach is harder. We chose the harder path. Her eyes drifted across the chamber to the countless sleepers who waited in silence. For a moment, something unreadable flickered across her face, pride, perhaps, or grief. Then she turned back to Zaren. "The law is restored," she said softly. "The galaxy knows again why it was written. It will either remember or it will perish. That choice is no longer mine." Zaren's hearts twisted. He wanted to ask what would happen next, if she would remain, if the others would wake. But before he could speak, the vault itself answered. The great doors began to close. Shadows swallowed the chamber, the hum of machines dimming as systems wound down. The human stepped backward into the darkness, her figure fading from view. "Wait," Zarin cried, reaching out. "What am I to tell them? What am I to do?" Her voice came one last time, carried on the air like a whisper through stone. "Tell them the truth, tell them fear is a choice, and remind them." The door sealed shut with a final echoing boom. "Never wake us." Zarin stood alone in the silence. His recorder blinked weakly on the floor, capturing only the last fragments of sound. His body trembled, his mind torn between despair and awe. The galaxy had heard the lesson, but whether it would learn, that remained uncertain. Above the vault, the stars burned quietly. Ships hung motionless, as if afraid to move. The law had been spoken once more, not as threat, but as warning. And though one human had returned to her sleep, every world now knew what had always been true. The greatest danger was not the humans themselves. It was what their awakening revealed about everyone else.